Hello, everybody. Welcome to the inaugural episode of the Lawrence Harvey Cyber Sit Down podcast. Tune in the first Tuesday of every month here throughout 2023 with myself, colleagues, and other executive security leaders across the industry for some straight from the source insight into the minds of security leaders. We'll be breaking down topics ranging from ways to best scale your security program, how to position yourself best within the job market, current events, trends, etc., and everything in between. My name is Alex. I'm your host for today's inaugural episode, principal recruiter here at Lawrence Harvey, focused on cybersecurity placements and client partnerships across the whole U.S. I'm joined here by our first guest, Stephen Davis, the CISO over at Revlon. Really appreciate his time today. This episode is centered around really kind of the overall current state of the talent market and security space overall in 2023. Good way to kind of gear up for the year. So with that, would like to turn it over to Stephen, as I think our listeners, I'm sure, would like to know really how you got your start in security in general and how you got to where you are today over at Revlon and, the point that you're kind of at.
No, great. Well, first, Alex, thanks for having me here today. I really appreciate it. Support your platform and the good folks over at Lawrence Harvey. So thank you again. Like you stated, I'm a CISO at Revlon. I've been at Revlon for about 2 years. If we kind of play back my career, the first decade has been spent supporting the federal government, as a security advisor, penetration tester, and risk assessor from that perspective. And then I moved over to the private sector. So, working for multiple industries, with opportunities to lead incident response teams, become more of your strategic leader, which really has, allowed me to become more of a business enabler focus. My background has been tactical, for instance, but working for, being leaders at Morgan Stanley, Discovery Communication, and in Revlon has really allowed me the opportunity to become a CISO at Revlon. And I think, one of the ways that I really not only gained the technical skill set, but the soft skill is to help through mentors. So I had mentors throughout my entire career, and that really kind of helped shape my career path to what it is to be today as the CISO Revlon.
Fair. Well, really appreciate the introduction. To me, sounds like two kind of major transitions during your career, one of which was from the government and public space into the private sector. What did that look like for you? I guess more kind of details into that, and how did you cope with any of the challenges within that?
Yeah, I think the difference for me was the chain of command when, working for the federal government, it was, chain of command. This is who you can communicate to. And where in the private sector, it was, hey, everyone's in arm's reach. There is no chain of command, obviously, outside the CEO. So I think the communication was a little bit different. I think there was less communication barriers, in the private sector than supporting the federal government. But, all in all, I think they all have the same mission, and that's, securing, the critical, infrastructure space.
For sure. Yeah. And then the second kind of major transition I heard was transitioning from more of that tactical or hands-on leader into more of the executive and strategy focused stuff. When maybe did that exactly happen for you? And, what are some of the details behind that?
So I would say hands on keyboards, that probably, happened probably my first CISO role supporting ProSight Special Insurance, which is a subsidiary of Goldman Sachs. I say that loosely because I'm a technologist by heart. So although my hand may not be on a keyboard, I am close to the technology. It was a culture shock. It was different, kind of like, I did have technology withdrawals at times, to where I had to delegate, certain things to my, tactical resources. But it was just something that, if I know that I had goals to be a senior leader in this space, and that I would have to kind of step away from the keyboard at some point.
Fair. One thing you mentioned there is just kind of setting the goals that you had. I think what I talk to candidates about a lot and hear from other security leaders maybe is a lot of people either do or don't have that goal to become a CISO one day. But if you set that early on, then you know what you're going for. And if you're looking to stay hands on the keyboard, then, that's highly valuable as well. So.
Yeah, so just to be clear, I never had my eyes set on being a CISO until a recruiter reached out to me about a CISO opportunity. I always thought I was going to be a tactical, security professional. But as things happen, opportunities present themselves, and once I realized what the roles entail as far as becoming a CISO, I was willing to take that challenge and never look back.
Yeah, well, glad to hear it. Glad you're here today. I guess let's get into kind of the main themes of the episode. Obviously, I think the kind of golden question, and I'm sure everybody across LinkedIn and a bunch of platforms will just kind of generally ask, what do you think some of the larger 1, 2, 3 maybe kind of cybersecurity trends are for 2023 overall?
Yeah, I think with the digital transformation shift, the IoT shift, I think the trends are going to be more visibility, more control, and faster remediation. I really think that's what you're going to see, and I think you're going to see a lot of those type of processes and tools that's really become more mainstream.
Fair. And how do you think that ties in maybe into the overall kind of trends for the market in general, but certainly the job market? Because obviously, with where a lot of companies are going through layoffs or hiring freezes, et cetera, there's a lot more talent on the market in theory, right? But the kind of need for talent in cybersecurity in theory has never really been higher, right? How do you think that kind of coincides with how other security leaders are going to continue to scale their organizations?
Yeah, I think you're going to see two shifts. I think you're going to see more organizations, outsource some critical security functions. I think you will see that. I think that trend is going to pick up, especially the way, the financial, market is today. So I think you'll see that. But then I also think you're going to see where before cyber leaders would look for, hey, I want this individual with a security certification or the security training. I think you start seeing them look more into non-traditional security roles to fill their security pipeline, hiring someone from the help desk, hiring someone from the DevOps team, because at the end of the day, they touch cybersecurity in some way, shape, or form. So I think you'll start seeing that to fill the cyber gap as well.
Yeah, fair. What do you say to the security leader or CISO that maybe has gone through a round of layoffs or is on a hiring freeze and has the current team and has to now do quote unquote more with less? How do you kind of leverage the current skill sets you have to continue to scale the organization as you need to?
Yeah, I think you really, that's a really good question. I do more with less a lot. So I try to tell CISO that be wary of burnout, because burnout is real. That's one thing I look for. But I also tell them, look for other opportunities within your IT team to where someone may be underutilized in other areas. And see if they have a passion in cybersecurity, see if you can, leverage, that skill set as well, and really train someone up to be that, cybersecurity. So I believe in that whole matrix, organization works for me as well.
Yeah, a lot of the clients and relationships that I've established within the market, a lot of people are saying, we're really focused on training people, hiring more junior people and getting them to the point we need to be, rather than hiring, maybe more senior people, or like you're saying, even outsourcing some of the security functions, going through an MDR, what have you. What skill set really across the whole cybersecurity domain do you think that CSOs and CISOs are going to still really continue to need, most in 2023 or moving forward?
A need as far as themselves, a need as far as talent.
As far as the skill set, talent.
Yeah, I think so I'll take you from my perspective. The technical aspect for me is last. Yes, if you understand security foundation component, I'm good. But what I play a big emphasis on is soft skills. How do you, collaboration and communication, not just with colleagues, but with end users. Because the worst thing I can have is getting a team killer. Have a positive, team, Is someone going to be collaborative, or they're going to work in a bubble? And that's what I try to call. So when we talk about skill set, for me, the priority one is what soft skills do they have?
Yeah, fair. What are some of the soft skills you think stand out more than others potentially?
I think one of the questions I always ask in interviews with any cybersecurity professionals, you're going to have more bad days than good days.
Yeah.
So how do you problem solve? I want someone to understand, how do you solve problems? And, what's your approach to solving problems? That's what I look for from a soft skill. What are your presentation skills? Because at some point you're going to, you may not have PowerPoint slides, but you are going to talk to someone about, your finding, whether that's me or peers in other organizations.
Yeah. And I think that's some good insight as well into the recruiter's mind as well, both internal functions and an external recruiter like myself and my team, as far as soft skills to look out for. Because naturally, when we have a job rack, we're really diving in on like the technical skill set naturally, right, as far as what you're looking for, but really digging into candidates' problem solving skills, I think would really translate into how you're kind of representing them to the client. So that's some great insight. I'm glad you brought that up. We talked about it a little bit, but in general, the job market, like I said, is tightening, layoffs, et cetera. There's still probably 70,000 plus cyber openings across the industry by, some sources and everything. It seems to be a consistent theme, however, that some companies, kind of large, small, cross industries, what have you, are still struggling to find the talent and source that talent. Do you think it's because the market is quote unquote more murky, or what do you think some of the challenges that hiring managers are having right now? What do you attest that to?
Yeah, I think, and even for me at some point, have to lower expectations. There is not a security professionals that have it all.
Yeah.
For myself, there's other CISOs that are stronger than me in other areas, and I may be stronger than them in other areas. But you're not going to find that candidate that's going to check the box. You need to figure out set your priorities. What can you live with from a candidate, and what do you think you can actually coach them on later on? And I think that's the mindset going forward. And I've talked to a lot of CISOs that are actually starting to do that. Where before it was, hey, I only want someone that has AWS experience or AWS certification. Well, now it's like, well, what if someone has Azure? What if someone has Google? The methodology and the concept are still the same. It's just different platforms.
Fair. Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. I wanted to ask you kind of a specific question about your kind of journey. Obviously, you've been highly successful recently in retail and finance in the past. How does your role change as a CISO, as an information security leader across different industries from your experience? Or I guess what are kind of the unique challenges?
I think my role, it changed over the bit, where before, I was more of this kind of strategic, this strategic leader. But now, being that I'm part of the business, I add value to the business. I need to be more of an influencer, and also have a strategic mindset to bring value to the business.
Fair. Yeah, I would definitely agree. We've dived into a little bit as far as kind of trends for this year. As far as your experience last year, even kind of your whole time at Revlon, what was the kind of premier way that you would, find your cybersecurity talent? How did you scale up your teams? What was the kind of success stories you might have there, or even at past companies?
Yeah, I definitely believe in hiring within.
Yeah.
I do look for opportunities for upward mobility within the company before I go outside of the organization. And then I make sure that I also have funding available to continuously training my team as the threat landscape is continuously, changing. So as the defender of the organization, I want to make sure that they're, up to speed. And some of those things are not even, cost related. It's just giving them a time away to either they sit on a webinar or they go to a free conference or something like that. That's why I try to, help them out.
Yeah, I think the question of like, what are we hiring these people into, right? As far as kind of career growth and everything, not just the job that needs to be done, even in consultancies and everything. Obviously, it's a lot more kind of all over the place, but oftentimes when we're vetting new roles or new clients in general, a lot of the question is around what are we hiring people into? What are the training budgets, et cetera? And this year, in kind of a cost cutting year, if you will, it can be really easy to throw a lot of that stuff out the window and just focus on, finding the right guy that can just kind of sit down and do the job. But like you're saying, if you can hire from within and really train people up, that's definitely probably the more organic and healthy approach, especially this year.
Yeah, I think you also need to, when you hire, you need to make sure that aligns with the business strategy. Where's the organization going, as well? So I look for that as well. So maybe this candidate may have this skill set. We may not use it now, but I know in 6 months to a year, the company is going to launch this new program, and that's where that skill set can be utilized.
Yeah, fair. Let's pivot maybe into more of the candidate kind of driven side of the conversation, as far as how can candidates, both in your eyes as a hiring manager, security leader, and potentially talent acquisitions eyes, myself, internal, external, what have you. What do you think the best way is a security professional, really at any level, but maybe more junior people in this case, can really help differentiate and stand out? You mentioned the soft skills aspect, but certainly on a resume, or what kind of experience can these people get early in their career you think would really come off well?
I think networking, having the ability to network. I'm a true believer in oral and written presentation. I think that goes a long way. And when we talk about, interviewing, I know I want to look for a candidate, I'm going back to soft skills.
Yeah.
I think that plays a key. But I think it's the foundation. I think what I start to see now is candidates are solely focused on, what's hot.
Yeah.
Whether it's AWS, whether it's CrowdStrike. And then what's missing is some of the foundational elements of cybersecurity. You very rarely see a new hire or a new entry-level candidate that wants to do vulnerability management, or wants to do incident response. They want to do something with artificial intelligence, and those type of things. So I try to teach candidates, if you want to separate yourself from the pack, really focus on foundational elements, call out those things in your resume, because I've seen resumes on candidates and they're all the same.
Yeah.
They all have the same skill set, but what a lot of them don't have is just foundational components. And I think if more candidates, focus on the foundational components of cybersecurity, whether it's, compliance or, internal audit, those things, I think it goes a long way.
Yeah, fair. I think I've asked a lot about kind of leveraging what skills you have, both technical skills, right? But also the soft skill stuff you're talking through. I guess when you're assessing a candidate in an interview, let's say, what do you think are kind of the first 1-2 things that you're looking for right off the bat?
The one thing I'm looking for is someone with a lot of energy, someone with that I think can, with adaptive, and then a great communicator. Those are the 3 things that I'm looking for, in candidates. Because the cliche is real. Cybersecurity never sleep, and someone needs a lot of energy to work in this field. It's not, necessarily a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah, fair enough. I think one thing from my perspective, I dig into a lot, and I think a lot of people in external recruitment dig into a lot, is just kind of motivations in general. And I think the energy aspect that you've mentioned will really come through as far as their motivations and stuff, their passion for the industry, where they want to go, et cetera. And I think being an external recruiter, I get a decent kind of angle into people's backgrounds, because obviously I'm not reaching out about just one role per se. I'm reaching out to develop a relationship. And I think that's kind of a key thing that I think separates maybe an external recruiter from an internal one, as far as getting to really dig into candidates' motivations and everything, and to really translate into a role or a hiring manager. So yeah, I think those are kind of all the main questions I had for you, as far as kind of trends for the year, the security market, the candidate perspective. I did want to give you the chance potentially to ask me, obviously having a decent wide view into the market, any questions or any other insight you think is kind of worth diving in on.
Yeah, so I think one question that comes up a lot, and I've actually seen it through candidates that apply for our job, what do you look for on CVs, on resumes, from candidates that really stand out to you? Is it just all listing like technology, or you're looking for, some soft skills as well?
Yeah, well, I think the classic cliche is most recruiters or hiring managers only look at a resume for 6, 7, 10 seconds or so. I'm not sure what the actual number is. Ideally longer than that, right? But I think the initial thing that jumps out is the format, how it looks, make it look professional, something that's not 10 pages ideally. Obviously, you can have a full CV that you have on file, right? But a resume really should only be 1 to 2 pages, very digestible, and it should really highlight obviously the current role you're in, but it's not just this is what I do, I'm responsible for this. It's what are the results that I've garnered doing this job? How have I leveraged this skill set, et cetera? And writing in that way comes off almost immediately as you're reading a resume, aside from just the format. Because to be honest with you, let's say you're reaching out to a senior incident response consultant that's 3, 4, 5 years experience or so. In theory, there's probably thousands of people that could write the exact same experience level, exact same type of company, exact same tools, right? But how did you personally leverage your experience? Did you mentor anybody? That kind of stuff really stands out, if that answers your question.
No, it does. No, I definitely appreciate that. I get that. I get that question a lot. And then being on the recruiter side of the house, what are you seeing, as some hot skill sets now that some of your candidates are looking for? Not necessarily at a CISO level, but maybe just, entry level or mid level. What are customers looking for now?
Yeah, I think cloud security is a big one. We talked about it a little bit. You mentioned, AWS, Azure, GCP, the whole ordeal. Both internal companies and a lot of consultancies we're working for. Cloud security, especially AWS, has been a big one. I think you mentioned earlier, a lot of probably larger companies are going to consider outsourcing security operations, for example. So it's less of the SecOps and incident response stuff this year, but definitely heavy on the cloud security side. A lot of the larger financial institutions we're working with are really digging in on larger threat intelligence and threat management program, like you said, kind of shifting things to the left, being more proactive. So that's definitely a theme that we're seeing overall, but there isn't really any kind of specific skill set or domain that I've seen take any sort of downturn. Like I said at the start, the needs have never been higher within security, and actually with how kind of muddy and murky the job market is in general, it's actually potentially a more, not sure what the word is, but more intense job market, really.
Okay, I'm great. Yeah, I think those are the 2 questions that I had for you.
Cool. Well, yeah, that's kind of it for me, I guess. Or there is one last one. I think I'll start asking this every episode, I think, just to kind of lighten things up. What's the worst either sales or recruiter outreach that you've seen since stepping into that CISO seat? I know most of the conferences and CISOs I talk to always have some kind of horror story. Always funny to get out there.
Oh my God. There's been quite a few, from meet and greet with LeBron James to that was a big one.
Oh man.
Yeah, that was a big one. Never happened. I think from a recruiter perspective, I think what I get most of all is I get a lot of emails from recruiters for warehouse workers. So I get those. So those are some of the things that I get. But yeah, I think LeBron James has been, one of the biggest one. And I think that came about because I was at a conference, and I think we started talking about basketball, and I tell people that, LeBron James is one of my favorite player. And I think this sales team, took advantage of that. I'm not sure if they would make that happen, but, obviously, what comes with that. Hey, bring us in, let's talk about, how we can help you, and, those type of things. But
fair enough. Fair. Well, good to hear. I think in a competitive market, we'll definitely get a number of more interesting stories throughout the year. So we'll have to check in hopefully at some point. But other than that, no, I really appreciate the time, Stephen. It was great to connect with you here. I think that about does it for the first episode here, the Lawrence Harvey Cyber Sit Down. Of course, thanks to you, Stephen, for joining us here. I'm sure we'll see you again in the future. Looking ahead, we'll be joined by Al Goose, who's the CISO over at SnapDocs, as we dive into further security trends for the year. That's it for me. We'll see you next time. I appreciate it a ton, Stephen. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Alex.
Take care, everybody.
Okay.